So hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Merle Massey. I'm the coordinator of the Undergraduate Research Initiative. So when you guys get emails on Monday mornings from the SURE program, they come from me. So hello, for those of you that I have not yet met. And I apologize to everyone who's looking in. I'll turn my screen so maybe you guys can see me a little bit. It's dark in here. So hello to everyone who's on Zoom. And there were 71 people who signed up for today's session. So clearly there's a lot of energy here in this space for students to know how to get a research position or learn how other people have done it. That's why I have 3 panelists who are here today as well. So Jean Sanfuego, Jeremy Irvin, and Tanish Patel are all here as well. And once I've kind of finished my opening kind of part of the presentation, then I'm going to invite the 3 of them up and we're going to have a little chat about how they all landed their jobs and what that looked like. So with that, I'm going to advance my slide. So as we gather here today, we acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respect to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. The second one is my own personal one. You'll find it on if you send me an email, it's part of my email signature. I created it with the Guanama Center for Teaching and Learning. This week is Reconciliation Week, Friday. Of course, there's no school and no work because it is a day for us to reflect and remember on truth and reconciliation. And like a friend of mine, a First Nations friend of mine said, thinking about our history and learning even just one thing about Indigenous history here in Western Canada will go a long way towards what you yourself can do around reconciliation, because you can't have reconciliation without truth. So you can make that as your task for Friday, is to think about what you can learn about what First Nations in Western Canada experienced as they were colonized. So first things first, I wanted to ask those of you who are in the room, why are you interested in a research position? Just shout it out. What are some of your reasons for wanting a research position? For the experience, best reason of all. Yeah, so you learn something new that you don't usually learn in your course syllabus. Yeah, that you don't learn in a classroom. Absolutely. What else might be reasons to take on a position as a research assistant? Go ahead. Make your CV look good. Yeah, like let's be practical about this, right? You know, some of you are heading into medicine, or you want to be in veterinary medicine, or you want to go into dentistry. A research experience does look good on your resume. And I would say probably half to 2/3 of students who might be heading to a professional college, or maybe they already know that they want to go into graduate studies. Also, an undergraduate experience looks good. Any other reason to get a research experience position? Professional relationships. Sorry, go ahead. Contribute to science. I'm a historian, so I contribute to history, but yes. But I just want to back up Jeremy for develop professional relationships. Also a really good one. Thank you. Income. Yeah, money. I don't think that there are any undergraduate positions on campus that are going to pay you as much as what you would make if you were going to go work on road construction, highway construction for the summer. So be prepared for that. And I'm just going to be honest. But having said that, all of these other things, depending on where you want to go in life, might add in. So with those in mind, I always like to start with, where do you find a research position? Because sometimes they are actually advertised. And so I want to make sure, just in case students don't know this, I want to make sure that that's covered. But the 2 places here on campus to check is Career Link. So Career Services, that is for students here at the University of Saskatchewan, has their own Career Link. You do need your USask NSID to access it. But once you've done that, there are a number of positions that regularly get advertised. Fewer from faculty, but there are always some. And then there are quite a few that come in from, say, other campus groups, maybe the Diefenbaker Center, if you're a historian and you want to have do a summer heritage interpretive job, something like that, or work in one of the art facilities here on campus. But there are a number of larger groups. Canadian Light Source, for example, will also advertise summer positions on there. The second space, and this is something that undergraduate students don't always think about, but careers.usask.ca is another space where you can look. There's actually a job being advertised right now. If anyone has audiovisual technical capabilities, the audiovisual group here in town is looking for an undergraduate student to help out there. So it's not a research position, but it is a paid position. So if you're looking for a little bit of extra income and you're good at audiovisual, check it out. There's one there. But I do try and watch that one on a regular basis. And when I see something, or sometimes professors will send me jobs, I'll send it out to you guys on Monday mornings and give you guys that heads up that there's a professor that's searching for a student assistant. The third place that students don't always remember to look is your department, and sometimes your college will have a website, and sometimes they'll send around emails or other kinds of places and announcements. Do check those on a regular basis because professors may be looking for a student assistant, particularly because I have another presentation around how and when professors land grants, but they'll land grants. They'll be awarded research funding all year round, right? Because there's consistent and constant rounds of competition. And so a professor might not know right now in September that they've got funding, but let's say February rolls around and all of a sudden they land a grant, and then they want to get it up and running and they want to hire some students to help out with that. So if you watch at your department or your college level, if there's any kind of an award announcement, such and such a professor that just won an award, that's a good place to kind of pay attention and see if they start looking for student assistants. So I want to share an example that we're going to come back to. So we're just going to read it now and then we'll come back to it. This is a real life USask example from a USask professor that shared it with me of an example of an email that they got from a student. Dear so-and-so, I'm so-and-so from the Agricultural College. Because I'm about to graduate in April of this year and I have an idea of continuing my studies, I would like to ask if you have any openings for students. So that is a copy and paste from a real email that came into a USask professor. What we're going to do today is we're going to come back to this, and we're going to come back and we'll think of ways that we can make this better. First, we're going to have a quick presentation on some ideas on how to do that. So a couple of years ago, we created an infographic, and I'm going to email it out so you will all have a copy of it that my office created about how to approach a research supervisor. And we're going to quickly go through that infographic, and then we're going to open it up to our panel. The first thing that it says in the infographic is basically, if you want to work with a research professor, your first job is to actually conduct research, do your homework. So you need to know which faculty are actively looking, who's holding grants right now, networking, attending events on campus, we've got one coming up on Wednesday, by the way. So we have a faculty student mixer on Wednesday of this week, where we've got 3 or 4 faculty this week who are actively recruiting, and they're going to stand up in front. They're going to give you a presentation on what's happening in their lab, and you guys can like, oh yeah, that sounds totally cool, and then go have a conversation with them and maybe land a job. But that's an example of a networking event, and there are others. We're going to have another in October and another in November. But there are other events happening across campus. So if you see anything that's like a talk, anything like that, I do encourage you to start paying attention to those and going to those, because you're going to find, especially if it's an area that you think you might be interested in, because the people who are also interested in that thing will be at that event. So go to those, ask for recommendations from other students, maybe they worked with professor. But I do encourage you most strongly to be very strategic and targeted. One of the worst things that you can do is send out a mass email to like 50 USask faculty asking for a job, because that's going to get you absolutely nowhere. So the more targeted you are, the better. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. You also have to find the right supervisor for you. So if you've met this person in person and you didn't get along with them, yeah, maybe don't approach them for a job. Maybe that's not a good space for you to be. And a way to research them on the back end is to read their publications, read what they've published. Almost every faculty here on campus has their own website that lists all their publications, so you'd be able to find them that way. And also double check before you even approach them and see if you're, if you're a good fit for working with them. Make sure that you actually meet university requirements. For example, one of the programs that we run is the NSERC USRA program. You have to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident to actually apply for that funding. So if you're not, it won't work for you. They may have other funding. That doesn't mean you can't approach the professor, but you can't approach the professor to apply with you for an NSERC USRA if you don't qualify. What are some other ways that maybe you can identify potential supervisors? And I know that my three panelists will talk about this as well and how they found their supervisor, but just shout out, what other ways might you think it would work to meet a supervisor? I'm going to check the chat, see if there's anything there. Not at the moment. All right, so we're going to come back and that'll be a question for the three panelists. So think on that one. Other ways that you can meet potential supervisors, and I can jump in on that one as well. Jeremy, I know that the way it happened to you is a good example. So the next thing that you do is create that introduction and connection. Usually the first connection, unless you happen to meet them at a real live event and can do it in person, but oftentimes you've done your background research and maybe you haven't met this particular professor and you don't know how to connect with them, so you're going to send them an email. Cold call emails are very common and done well. They will land you at least an interview, but only when they're done well. So that's one of the reasons why we want to go through this. Don't send it from your hot pants at Granny Hotmail. Don't send it from, use your USAF email, please. You wouldn't believe how many Gmail stuff I've even seen that comes from the yeah. You guys have really great emails. Don't use those for your professional stuff. Use a proper salutation. Hey, or hey you, or hi, I've seen those. Please don't do that. The biggest thing though is to introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you study? What year are you in? A little bit about you. It doesn't have to be your whole resume or anything like that, but just be clear about who you are. You also need to target your pitch specifically to that particular professor. So that's why when I said those mass emails to 50 professors, you need to target that email for that specific professor. That means that you need to send 5 or 10 different emails. I'm very sorry, but that is your job. This is like a job hunting kind of a thing. And so you need to make sure that your email for that professor is very specific and targeted, because you need to show that you've done your homework on who they are and what they actually study. So that's pretty important. You also want to craft as error-free a message as you can. And I don't care if you're an English speaker or not. I use editors all the time, and I'm an award-winning author, and I still use editors just to make sure that if I'm crafting something that's really important and I actually want that job, I make sure that someone else reads what I'm going to send. And so you can go to the Writing Center. I don't know if you guys know this, but you don't have to approach the Writing Center just when it's something that you're submitting for class. They will also take a look at your resume, your CV, your cover letters. They will give you feedback on that as well. So do take advantage of that. A third thing, and this is just by the way, we created this infographic with faculty members who have supervised students. And they told us these are, if people follow these are really good practices. So know your goals and your timelines. So that basically means know what you're asking for. Are you asking for someone to supervise your honors? Are you asking to come in and shadow them in the lab for a few hours just to get a sense of what's happening in their lab before you carry the conversation further? That's a thing, and that's perfectly fine to ask for. Are you finishing up and are looking to see if they're looking for graduate students? Be very specific about what you're looking for. Are you looking for a summer position? Are you looking to work with them to apply for an NSERC USRA for that 16-month summer position. What is it that you're looking for? The more specific, you might be just looking for, 6 hours a week. Maybe you heard that there's potential that they are looking for extra bodies in their lab for 4 or 6 hours a week. That's a thing as well. Sometimes I don't often encourage this, but it can be a good route to get into research, but to offer to volunteer in a lab or a research group. I prefer students who are being asked to do work to be paid. That's a thing. Some students do choose to do it on a volunteer basis, thinking that that will then morph into a paid job, and that's up to them. And also know your timelines. I'm available to start at this time. That helps to the professor to know whether or not, oh yes, our grant will be in place by then. I will actually be looking for students, whatever it is. If you can't start until May 1st, let them know. And so, yeah, let them know the timelines and what you're asking for. This one's something that students often forget. You can put it in that first email, but definitely if you do get invited in to have a larger conversation, this is something that I want to make sure that students remember to do, and that's to know your strengths and ways that you might stand out. And what you bring that's helpful and unique, it could be anything from your enthusiasm. Professors tell me in spades, that's their #1 thing that they want from a student's enthusiasm. But multiple languages, lots of labs really value your ability to speak more than one language. Awesome. Python programming skills, or R, or Stata, or any of those sorts of things that you guys have maybe studied, or you're really good in it, you're an Excel guru. Whatever it is that you can do on the background or that you've had some exposure to already, make sure that they know, that they've heard about it. Also, your ability to handle adversity. Basically, that's a thing that professors watch for, is your ability to come back if you got knocked down. So if you have a story around that, or you have a physical or an impairment that maybe isn't visible, but you've been really working on. I have a friend who's a professor in the history department who's severely dyslexic, and he's a professor, and he's been battling that one for a long time to get to where he is, because of course, a history professor does nothing but write all the time, and he's dyslexic. So this is, so he's had some challenges, but it makes the way that he sees the world quite different. He's also able to handle adversity, and he's able to handle things when he's been knocked down, he can come back. So these are some examples. Also your passions and what you would like to learn. My grandma just got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and I'm really passionate about studying that. These sorts of things can create that sense of connection. People sometimes ask me, how do I talk about the SURE program? Just because you've been part of the SURE program and maybe you've achieved your co-curricular credit, your 10 hours, that doesn't mean that you are trained to do research. Just being very clear on that. I have not trained you on anything that you might need in that particular lab. But you can talk about SURE as an example of your interest in research, that you've demonstrated that you're interested in entering the research realm of the university. And I've done that because I've been exposed. I've joined SURE on purpose. So that's a way to talk about it. There's some things around this whole process that you can control. And I've talked about all the things that you can control. But there are a few things that you're not going to be able to control. And I just wanted to flag those for your attention. Some students will say, I'm amazing at everything and I'm going to be the coolest person. Well, that sounds great, but students who exaggerate or are dishonest about what they actually know will cause themselves more of a problem than they can anticipate. So it's okay to know nothing. It is absolutely okay. Professors know that you're undergraduate students and that you don't have a lot of experience in a lab. And they will want you sometimes for that because your brain is fresh. You will ask questions that their graduate students and their senior PhDs are so far down the disciplinary hole, that it doesn't even occur to them to ask. And you'll be over here going, how come we don't do it this way? And the PI will go, and the whole lab goes and changes what they do. I've seen it happen. So it's okay to know nothing. They will expect that and they will value that more than what you think. Or the whole thing being too broad, I'll research anything, I just really want a job. That's not going to get you very far either. The more specific and professional that you are about what you want and what you're actually interested in, the better it will be for you. Lots of professors want you to talk about your research direction, where you think you're going to go, and that doesn't just mean graduate school, although they're often in recruitment mode looking for graduate students. They're measured on graduate students and how many they have, so it is something you could maybe consider, but it's not, but more in terms of recognize that there's the National Research Council and Saskatchewan Research Council and the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and there are all these other spaces and places that value the ability to do research. And maybe you just kind of frame it in terms of your future life goals, and that helps too. Persistence without being a pest. And that's a tough one. It will sometimes take time to find a supervisor that's the right fit, and it's the right fit that they have funding for you and they have space for you, because some professors will limit how many students they take into their labs at any given time. You may be superb and it has nothing to do with you, but they honestly just don't have space for you. Try not to take that rejection personally. Be professional. Say, thank you very much. Do you have recommendations of a colleague who might be in a nearby field, might be doing something similar, and ask them for references and referrals. They'll be glad to help. If they think that you're an amazing student and they're sad that they can't take you on, chances are they will try and help you find a spot. So yeah, but yeah, move on with grace. Don't keep pestering them. If they've said no and given you their reasons, that's a no. The flip side of that is that I also encourage students to remember that it is also your responsibility to look after you and to know when to say yes. You don't have to say yes to the first opportunity that comes along. If there's something about that, your instincts play a role. There might be something going on in that, and I always tell students, never accept a position until you've had a chance to talk to some of the other students who've worked with that professor and have that conversation, a private conversation away from the professor, not sitting in front of the professor, because that's not a true conversation. And a good supervisor will automatically do this and give you the names of a couple of students whom they've worked with so that you can have that private conversation. They don't all remember to do that, but the really, really good ones do. But still, just say, can I talk to a couple of other undergraduates just so I get a sense of the day-to-day or week-to-week expectations? Frame it that way, and they'll be like, oh yeah, absolutely, go talk to Bill. And away you go, and you have coffee with Bill, or you guys go for a walk around the bowl where no one else can hear you, and you have that conversation. So you need to be your own best advocate. I have seen students end up in positions where they did not feel respected, safe, and welcome because there was something about that lab that wasn't the right fit for them. So being aware of that and also knowing when to say no and to keep looking, that's an important part of being an adult and advocating for yourself. And it's tough because universities are built on power systems, right? You've got faculty at the front teaching the classes and handing out the marks. You've got faculty holding the grants and hiring the people. You've got a power imbalance going on all the time. So it's difficult for you. So one of the things that we've been doing, and Jeremy's been helping with that, we've been working on a student supervisor agreement for undergraduate students, and we're hoping to have it through the university processes throughout this winter and ready to go for next spring. That's our goal. So yeah, this is just kind of that overview. Don't exaggerate, be professional, don't give up, because you will, if you really want a position, you will find one. You might end up doing something that you completely had no plan for. We have a professor in kinesiology who studies Métis jigging. And she was having a little bit of trouble coming up with summer students. And so she ended up with a summer student who's over like in Fizz Farm, or like, I don't know, he's way over, doesn't matter. Off he went to go study Métis jigging for the summer, and they're doing just fine. So you can cross disciplinary lines, just be flexible. Lots of professors will actually like that about you, to cross disciplinary lines. Yeah. Don't give up. Try your best to find a space for you. And if it isn't the right space for you, don't settle. So after all of that, what are some of the ways that we can improve this example? Just shout it out. Go ahead. Well, it's an interesting, because I'm about to graduate in April, that could suggest two things, right? It could suggest that they're after graduate studies, but they didn't explicitly say, I'd like a graduate student position, right? Maybe they're going to do a second degree in something else, or maybe they're going to do a certificate. We don't actually know what they're graduating from. Yeah. What else about the student do we not know? Go ahead. Where he, yeah, his field is expertise. So even from, I'm a student from the agricultural college. What does that actually tell us? They're in the College of Ag Bio, but that's one of the largest colleges on campus. What did they study? Did they study animal science? Did they study horticulture? Did they study crop science? Did they study soil science? Did they study ag economics? What did they study? We have no idea. So that's another way to improve it. And you're right, I have an idea of continuing my studies. What were those studies? Exactly, as you say. Other ways that we can improve it. Yeah, the time of, I would like to ask if you have any openings for students. Openings for what? Openings for what kind of students? For how long? What kind of job? Exactly, to be specific and timely.
I'm not in projects or anything, but like they have worked previously on this. They may have researched something in the particular field in which they would like to continue with it. If they had mentioned that in the email, it would have popped up.
It would have popped up more, right? So in case you guys didn't hear that in Zoom, we basically said that we don't know what other things that student may have done, what their background is, what other projects they may have done, what their accomplishments might have been, anything that would sell that student to the professor. Did I capture that more? Okay, good. Go ahead. Formal name of the college, yes, the Agricultural College. It hasn't been called that for a long time. College of Agriculture and Bioresources, and there was a fairly serious debate when we changed it from just College of Agriculture to College of Agriculture and Bioresources, because there's this whole resource development and forestry and all kinds of things that are also part of Ag Bio. Agreed. So the formality of this, like there's overly formal, but then there's informal, and you want to kind of pitch it more towards the formal, but with that glowing sense of accomplishment as well. These are all really good. Go ahead. Yeah, some of the works from the professor. So showcase in your email what you know about that professor and why you're sending the email to that professor, what they're researching specifically that you're really excited about. These are all great. Thank you. Well done. I'm going to leave that for now. I want to talk to you just a couple minutes before I finish off. There are lots of USAF colleges and departments that sponsor and support undergraduate research. And I apologize that there's a big long list, but I just wanted to flag a few of them. Chemistry and biology both run very robust undergraduate research projects. A lot of their professors hold research grants. I was just talking to Stephen Urquhart just outside before this started. He works at the Canadian Light Source and does most of his research there. So that's an example. Kinesiology also does quite a bit, psychology, toxicology. I don't have the computer science department listed here, but they're huge in undergraduate research. Two of their students won Two out of the 3 top awards in the Shure Symposium this summer were won by computer science students. So they have a very robust undergraduate. The Western College of Veterinary Medicine has a huge one. Oh, I also mentioned toxicology. Toxicology is also huge in undergraduate research, and medicine. Medicine is huge in undergraduate research. They want their incoming doctors to understand how research works, and they put money towards it, and they've got both the Dean's projects, the biomedical projects, and the interdisciplinary projects. So there are quite a few opportunities there. Pharmacy nutrition also has quite a few as well. So there's definitely opportunities if you take a look. Another opportunity, this one rolls through my office, and that's why you need to, so once you've found a faculty member who wants to work with you, one of the options is that the 2 of you together can apply for an NSERC USRA. You had one, yeah. So that means that both the faculty and the student, it's a 2-part application process, and both of you have to apply together to NSERC to achieve this funding. That's why we work so hard in the fall to get students to understand, to reach out to faculty, to make those matches, because where the application process is going to close earlier this year, January 15th. So we need to have those matches in place earlier. So that's why I wanted to kind of raise this and start talking about this, even though we're only September 26th, the next summer might seem like a long time away. I'm going to be talking about this a lot all fall. There's also lots of jobs beyond the University of Saskatchewan. Every summer there are around 300 to 350 students at USask that hold summer research positions, but there are summer research positions elsewhere. National Research Council, the Saskatchewan Research Council has quite a few. The MyTax Accelerate program, so MyTax is a federal program that has matching funding for industry, and there's a lot of opportunity there to hire students. You have to work with industry, an academic, and a student, so it's a 3-part kind of process, but they have a lot of funding, and they accept projects that are 4, 8, 12, and 16 months. So you can take a time off from university and go do a year doing that kind of thing. Government of Canada has quite a few. The Student Work Experience Program, there's a whole bunch through that. There's lots of co-op and internship programs that are very similar to doing research with a faculty member. You might be working in industry, but you get a lot of practical experience. And if you're looking for more opportunities, our website, so I'm under the Vice President Research at USask, and then you can see students, and then you'll find undergraduate, and then you'll find my website, and I try and keep that pretty updated. So by all means, check it out. But other than that, best of luck, and I'm gonna ask my panel of students to come up, and they're gonna talk a little bit. We're gonna do a little bit of a panel, and then you guys can ask them questions. How's that sound? All good? Okay. So I'm gonna get the 3 of you to come up here. I'm gonna put this sort of there between all of you. And hopefully that will pick it up for everybody on the Zoom. Quick thought.
I found my email that I sent my professor about your research. If you want to share it, just like.
Oh yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah, that would be. Yes, send it to me, and I can. You don't have to send it right now, but send it afterwards.
Okay.
Or you can read it. Yeah, absolutely, that'd be good. Thanks, John. So hopefully still hear us. I'll try and make my voice big so that it picks up. My first that I want you guys to do is to just introduce yourself and what you did this summer, and we'll go for the 3 of you, and then we'll start back with you, Jeremy, and we'll talk about how you landed your position. Does that sound good? So first round, just who you are.
So my name is Jeremy Irvin. I'm a 4th-year student in the Department of Plant Sciences in the College of Ag and Bio. So for the last year or so, I worked in Dr. Sean Prager's entomology lab, so the study of insects. And over the summer, after all my research has been on insect vectors, plant pathogens, and host and interactions between all 3 of them.
My name's Tanish. I graduated recently from physiology and pharmacology just this summer, and I worked 2 summers with Dr. Amy Stevens' analytical chemistry lab here in the chemistry department, working on DNA nanotechnology and metal nanoparticles.
Hi, my name is John Ray. I'm in my third year of biomedical science, and I worked with Dr. Don Holland to research the effects of cannabis exposure during gestational period. So we looked at cognitive, behavioral, and developmental aspects that comes with exposure to cannabis during developmental in the fetus.
Awesome. We're gonna start with Jeremy. How did you land your position?
Right. So actually, I got really lucky. I ended up being offered the position. It was actually rather unexpected. It was in a class that I was actually doing quite well in and I was quite interested in. I'd say that's one of your first things you try to do is be good at the class. But yeah, so I got really lucky that way. So I didn't actually have to send an email. But yeah.
Yeah. Apart from him, I actually had to send an email to the professor. Yeah, I just found the professor through the college's website and I looked into their interests and found out that I was also interested in DNA nanotechnology and just decided to send him an email, interviewed with them, and then landed the position.
Well, for me, I emailed 7 professors. 3 answered back and only 1 took me. So yeah, persistent. That's the key. Thing is, I actually wanted to do research during my first year, but because it was COVID, they didn't take a lot of students. So I decided that I wanted to I actually started as a simple student as well. So I did my 10 hours of the co-curricular record. So I've actually been emailing Emerald a lot because yeah, I've seen most of it. And then I emailed professors. And then, yeah, that's basically how I did it. It was a little bit hard at first just because a lot of professors prefer that you have a connection with any of the students that I emailed. So it was a little bit hard for me because I was out of the blue. I was my first year and they're like, yeah, who are you? Yeah.
But that persistence works, but I'm really happy to have this panel because I wanted to show you that it can happen in various ways. Jeremy was shoulder tap. And that can happen if you perform really, really well in class, you might get shoulder tap. I've seen a number of students end up with positions. So the next thing is, so from having that first conversation or that first connection, what happened between there and actually starting the job?
I mean, after like the first day that it was first offer, I said I'd love to take. We had an interview after that, and then it was a relatively informal process. It started relatively quick. I think 2 weeks or so. We got the payroll figured out, all that. But yeah, then I started working in the lab and great since.
But you also applied for an insert USRA as well.
Yes, so I started my undergrad research assistant job there in October-ish, maybe end of October. And I think the USRA deadline for last year was February the 1st.
Yes.
So it just kind of gave us, I think he approached me and asked about maybe end of December, like, hey, this is something we should look into. Basically, it's a top up of what I get paid over the summer if I stayed for the summer. And it's 16 weeks of paid internship on top of what the department already paid me. So yeah, then we took the next month and a half there and kind of drafted what I'd like to do over the summer, or what sort of research direction I'd like to go into, and drafted an application, submitted, and I was lucky enough to get it. I think I was notified in March or so.
But you did have your job, whether or not you
Yes, I had.
job.
Yeah, I had the job. Yeah, for 2 months prior.
Just making sure that I was clear on that one. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah.
Tash, how about you?
Yeah, so the first summer that I worked, I actually approached her after the NSERC deadline, but luckily I was able to get funded through the Sphinx Award, which is the Departmental Chemistry Award. And then the second summer after that, I approached her earlier on in December because I was still interested in the project and wanted to continue. And she said, and then we came together and applied for the NSERC funding, and I was funded through the NSERC for the second summer. And then,
Great, so for mine, I actually emailed my professor around October, and then he took me on a twinkle tour, what he calls it. So basically, a twinkle tour is he brings you around the lab and shows you what he's doing. So yeah, and all that, and then after that, he asked me if I was still interested, and I was very interested with what they're doing. Then he asked me to come to the lab meetings because it was still in sabbatical that time, so it was every week, just so I have an idea with what's happening, what research is going on right now. And then after that, he asked me if I'm still interested in working during the summer, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still very interested. And then I applied for the biomedical biomed research project, actually it's called. So yeah, and then I got it, and then after that I worked for the entire summer doing research.
Fantastic. When you started, what was the scariest thing?
Oh,
Yeah, it's John, you go first.
okay. Well, the scariest thing that I had to do is actually email the professors. Just because I was in my first year when I emailed them, and I'm like, I'm this guy off of high school. I didn't have any lab experience. I didn't have anything. I barely had an experience in a classroom because it was online. So yeah, and then after that, you'll realize that professors are actually kind of cool. They're really this chill people. They don't like to be called doctors. I don't know why everyone's like, oh, your email has to start with a doctor. Yeah, but I just call my professor by his first name. And then after that, I started meeting some people in the lab, and then it just realized that lab people are kind of cool. So yeah, and then that's just like eased me into the research there.
What's the scariest thing?
For me, so the first summer actually I started with mostly just online stuff because it was still COVID and there wasn't much like lab stuff to do. But scariest thing was starting on a brand new project because this is a project that she's started in collaboration with another professor. So I was asked to work on it if I was interested, and I said yes because it sounded something that was like a blend of the DNA nanotechnology and some more chemistry side of it as well. And that's why I started on that. And just scariest thing was just finding and gathering the information for something that's like not been done before.
You mean like a literature review kind of thing? Yeah. What were you doing?
I'm not sure if I really had anything that was overly scary when I first started. I guess the first thing, the only thing would be kind of like just like starting any new job, a bunch of new people, new places, and trying to get used to that, trying to work out what sort of dynamics are within the lab and sort of stuff like that. But nothing really overly scary. So I guess so. No, that's fine.
And from your, and actually, I'm going to stop asking questions. I can come up with questions all day. What questions do you have for our panel?
Oh yeah.
Question was there any point where you felt overwhelmed?
Yeah, so for me, the reason is I also I auditioned for a musical at Winnipeg, which I also got the lead role for, and I also decided to write the MCAT at the same time, and also I applied for the biometric project. I auditioned and applied for all three, thinking that I'm gonna get one, but then May came and they're like, okay, you have all of this. I'm like, oh. I'm like, okay, I actually had to plan out every day. I'm like, okay, from this day to from this time to this time, I'm going to be doing research. This time to this time, I'll be MCAT. This time to this time, I'll be musical theater. But then it got to the point where my research got really intense that I was like, so I'm just like, okay, I gotta good that I had to back off a little bit, which is, I think, is also a thing that you learn in research, is that you sometimes have to back off just so you can gather yourself and that your mental health is there. Yeah.
Balance. Go ahead.
John Holland. Yeah, he's in the neuroscience cluster doing of the health science.
And it's spelled Howland, H-O-W-L. And we're actually going to be recording a podcast with Dr. Howland Thursday morning with two of his students who worked alongside John. And yeah, so we're going to be recording the podcast. It should be released next week, so you'll hear more about his lab. Go ahead.
I can answer the first one for you. So in terms of background knowledge, I think you get some experience from actually doing classes like first year chemistry or the MSc classes that can give you exposure to the lab, but summer research in general is just brand new experience, just because you learn a lot of new techniques, a lot of new processes that you don't learn. You learn the theoretical aspect of it, but this is like applied and physically actually learning from doing hands-on work. So in terms of experience, you don't need that experience because you do get trained before you do any of this, right? So, but yeah, like experience does play a factor and not really at the same time. But yeah, it's just a matter of like what you need to do in the lab and what you're going to get trained on.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. Like, no matter really how much you prepare yourself for like the first couple of weeks, you probably won't do enough anyways. And you're gonna. The whole point of this is to learn new stuff. No matter how much prior work you really do, you're gonna learn more stuff. You can try to be experienced, like have as much experience as you want, or as much base background knowledge as you want. But and the thing, yeah, you're right. It's like a lot of it's in theory, and especially when you start doing research, it's all applied and how we actually apply these concepts, which is my favorite part about it.
Yeah, I have a different answer to that. Because for me, my research looked at neuroscience, and you don't really take neuroscience classes until your third or fourth year. So my background knowledge was biology. That's all I knew. But then I was still taken by my research professor, and then he made me read this big ass book. It's like, this is everything you need to know about neuroscience. Okay. I didn't even read it, but I still did fine. But yeah, and then for the second question, it depends on the type of funding you applied for. So there, as Merle mentioned, there's different fundings that you can apply for, different cost, or that's not the right word, but different amount of money, depending on how much you or where you apply for, or how much your professor is willing to give you. That's how much you get paid. Because what happens is that the funding is technically the money you're getting to get paid. So it's not like, for example, for me, my funding was $8,000. I didn't get it all at once. It was broken down in that 8 or 16 weeks that I worked during the summer. So yeah, and then some professors add a little bit more just because if you divide the hours that you're supposed to work, and then the amount of money you're getting, it's kind of like below. So yeah.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. So the university rules are that the lowest wage that can be paid at the university is $12.50 an hour. And so insert USRAs are $6,000, and the professor has to top it up so that it reaches no less than the provincial minimum wage. In Saskatchewan, that's only 11 or something like that. Anyway, but the USAP's rule that the lowest wage is $12.50, and so the expectation is that they need to meet that lowest wage. Some students, quite a few students, do get paid more than that. Do either of you and enter or enter that conversation?
Yeah, I got paid more than that, considerable amount more than that. Nothing mind blowing by any means. It wasn't that much more, but I really couldn't survive minimum wages. Yeah, my supervisors, I got the answer, and then he topped it up above that to something that would be acceptable for a student.
And they're not talking about out of their own pocket. Most professors who are hiring you to do research projects, they're sitting on a research plan. What they're doing with applying for biomedical or an insert USRA is just making their grant go that much further and leveraging it that much further and trying to pay you as much as they can.
Yeah, because professors, they're actually really nice people. They give you more than, not just like in terms of monetary topics, but they also give you more than just an experience. They also give you like kind of like a life coach technically, because like I can talk to my research professor and be like, hey, what do I do here? Like do this and this. Yeah, I approached my research professor to ask for my courses as well, and what should I do with my classes and all that. So
Our research is summer or
Both. Yeah, you can get an undergrad research like assistantship, which you wouldn't, I guess, doing your own research more so. You're just helping out around the lab wherever you can be. In the summer though, that's where you look at your own research position if it's doing your own research. And that normally starts. I'm not sure when summer starts anymore.
and then to build up on that, my research professor doesn't hire undergraduate students during the summer, just because the way he wants his undergrad students is that he wants to have them in a good place mark-wise, just because it's easier to get funding when you have really good marks. So my research professor wants me to focus on getting my marks up there for the next summer. So they'll probably ask you to help here and there. So your full-time research position is usually in the summer.
I've seen it happen both ways too, where that, like in Jeremy's case, where he was hired sort of in that September, October timeframe and did a few hours a week, sort of all through the winter, and then entered into full-time in the summer. Others will do it the other way around, where they walk into the lab for the first time, May 1st, or whatever, whatever Monday is in May, and they work full-time for the summer, but then maybe they want to do an honors project, or maybe the professor really likes their work and wants to keep them on for 6 hours a week. Then that becomes your job for the winter. Most of us can't make it through university without some kind of additional income on the side of their classes, and so that is an opportunity as well. But it depends, as you say, John Howard prefers not to do that. No. But I know other researchers who study snow, which means they need you in the winter time. There is a question online. I'm thinking about a research position during the summer. When should I email the research?
Now? Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just because my friends have been asking me and telling them to email professors as soon as possible, just because a lot of students will be emailing professors around October, December, around those times. It's better to have a head start, just so you're like ahead of everyone, Yeah, because sometimes my research professor only takes 4 undergraduate students, and there's already 4 of us. I was the first one to email, and then the next 3 got hired, and then that's it. He's not going to take anymore until one of us leaves, or unless there's more funding that comes for more students.
Yeah, just to add on to that, like they do like that you reach out to them early, just because there are grant deadlines as well. So they kind of have an idea of what they can fund you with. Like NSERC, for example, deadline is in January this year. And then there's a whole bunch of other scholarships that they do look at funding you through. And then it kind of narrows down the options that they can pay you with if you're reaching out to them in, like, let's say February or March. And it doesn't look good because you're doing it last minute. So.
On the flip side, there are, as I said, grants can happen, and a professor might get a grant awarded to them in March, and then they come to me and they're frantic. Any students who might be interested in a summer job and aren't already working for the Department of Highways. And so, I try and help out. But yes, if you're going to approach the professor and find a spot that you're interested in your area, fall is when you do it, and September, October is your ideal time. That's why I had this in September. It got early, but we really need it. Any other questions for our panel?
When you guys were getting into professors, you guys mentioned anything about high school and just strength there, or was it just about what you did?
I would say, I guess depends what year of university you're in. If you're just entering university, you really have no choice. You have to talk about your previous high school year or your last high school year. I'd say if you have a year of university done, that's what I kind of focus on. With the exception if you have some really incredible high school achievements, which I'm not sure if those are anymore, but that's been a while ago.
Yeah, like just to add on to that, even if you're just using your first year experiences and you just say like, hey, I have exposure in a chemistry lab from my first year chemistry class, even that small experience looks good, just because at least you know the proper etiquette for a lab, right? You have to wear a lab coat, all that stuff, right? Even though you're still going to have to do safety courses and whatnot, but it just looks good that, hey, you have some sort of understanding of what is expected of you.
I didn't add any achievement at all. I just expressed my sincere interest in the research. That's all I did. And then they're like, okay, come here. Join the lab.
Have a walk. No, first you called it.
Oh, the twinkle tour.
Go ahead.
that don't have to be focus on more previously.
Yeah, I can answer that because I'm originally from Regina. And so I lived here for all 4 years of my university, right? But there are cases where some professors are collaborating with professors in your home city, for example. So you can find a case like that, or you can simply just reach out to professors in a different university. I get that it might be a little bit harder to find a position at a different university, but it's still possible. And if you do want to stay in Saskatoon, then I guess like that's kind of on you in terms of like signing residence and whatever.
And to just build off of that, it's when it comes to funding, it's very limited if you're not a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen, just because most of the fundings that I know of are specifically for those people. But there are some instances where I have a friend who has a research position and then was paid for by the professor's grant itself, not any of the funding applied that you can apply for. So it really depends on the professor if they want to keep you even though you're not resident or citizen.
There's some good ones coming in on the chat, and I'm sorry I'm missing some of them. It said, please repeat the questions being asked by the audience. This is kind of listed clearly. I'll try and do that. Question, how do you find out what to do research in the summer?
Yeah, so I actually asked Merle about this, and they're like, "Hi, I don't know which professors do research in the summer," and the answer she gave me is kind of a hunt and peck kind of thing. So like you have to be bold and email a professor, and then hopefully they do research. If not, move on. Yeah, it's you just have to. Usually there is on pause. There's usually some research professors that goes like, "Okay, yeah, they did this over the summer," and then maybe that's a place you start. You know?
Yeah, so watching research communications and any stories that could happen around the grants that have been just, announced, those are the professors to approach. Any of the students who did a summer research program, oftentimes those professors consistently take in new students, so they're good to approach. Another way is that these faculty student mixers. So we have one coming up on Wednesday, another in October, where we have 7 professors coming so far, and there might be more by the time we get there. So they're actively recruiting, they're coming to this to actively like, come and bring me your resume. So, those are good events. Yeah. There's another question here. When emailing the profs, should I mention my grades or just the classes that I took? Did any of your professors look at your marks?
I can answer that one. So ideally you can attach your resume, which is just a professional snapshot of what you've done so far. But since this is kind of academic, you can put like a copy of your unofficial transcript, which you can get through pause, just a PDF of that with your email, just for their references. And that might actually help boost your chances of getting an interview with the professor.
Yeah, I'd recommend doing that for sure. Or depends on what the research is on. Just mentioning maybe your averages in those classes that would be would pertain to what they're actually doing.
Yeah. Also, like you could talk about if you did take a class with this professor or a similar class in that field and you found that interesting, mention that, hey, I found this really interesting, and that's how I researched and found out about your research interests, and just try to make like a connection that way with them as well.
Any final questions for our panel? It's 4:30 and I am respectful of all of the time.
I had a question. So the last question you mentioned about but I did not find the email.
Oh, I'll make sure that I send it out next. It's actually so it's part of the email that goes out every Monday. You can download it on there. But if it's not there, send me an email and I'll send it to you. It's just that even if you just take a piece of paper and write down all the ones, it's for you to remember what you did so that when you do the survey at the end of the term, you've got a list. All right, I did that one. Yes, that's sorry, that was a short question. Can we have a round of applause for our baby? No. Okay, should we run it again in October? Okay, run it again in October. You guys, you did such a great job. Thanks everyone. And lots of thank yous coming in particularly on the chat as well.
There's something we're going to do that going on.
Yes, I did. It's open again, so you should be able to access it on pause. I don't know what was going on, but we fixed it. All right, I got an email this morning. I meant to tell you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hi.